What if I told you that one city changed the course of human civilization? That here, between two rivers, laws were first written to protect the weak from the powerful. That here gardens were built that the ancient world called one of its 7 wonders, the pyramids, the Parthenon, the Colosseum. But this city was forgotten. Its name was Babylon, and this is not a legend, not a biblical parable. This is the real story of a real city that shaped the foundations of the modern world. To understand why, we need to go back to the beginning. The land that made Babylon possible had no mountains, no forests, almost no rain. Just 2 rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, cutting through a flat, hostile plain. And yet, this is where civilization was born. Every spring the rivers flooded. When the waters pulled back, they left behind rich, fertile soil that could feed cities. The Sumerians figured this out first. They built canals and irrigation systems that turned a hostile environment into the most productive agricultural region in the ancient world. And with surplus food came time to specialize, time to build, time to think. This is where writing was invented, not for poetry, for accounting. The first written words in human history were receipts. This is where the first cities rose, Uruk, Ur, Nippur, cities with temples that touched the sky and marketplaces full of merchants from distant lands. Babylon, in those early days, was nothing special. A small settlement on the Euphrates, modest, unremarkable. But around 2000 BC, the great empire of Ur collapsed. The political map of Mesopotamia shattered. Into that vacuum stepped the Amorites, semi-nomadic tribes from the west who absorbed the civilization they entered rather than destroying it. One Amorite dynasty took power in Babylon around 1894 BC, and its moment had finally come. For a century, Babylon was a minor power. Then, in 1792 BC, a young man took the throne. His name was Hammurabi. He didn't conquer through brute force alone. He was a strategist, a builder of systems. In the early years of his reign, he didn't launch wars. He dug canals, repaired temples, and wrote thousands of letters to governors and officials across his kingdom. He understood something many rulers missed. An empire built only on military conquest collapses the moment the army stops marching. What lasts is infrastructure, order, trust. For 30 years, he consolidated power quietly. And then he struck. In a series of brilliant campaigns, he dismantled every rival power in Mesopotamia, unifying the region under Babylonian rule for the first time in history. But conquest was only half the achievement. In the later years of his reign, Hammurabi had the laws of his kingdom carved into a massive column of black stone and placed in the temple for all to see. We call it the Code of Hammurabi, 282 laws covering wages, property, marriage, trade, and crime. This is where an eye for an eye comes from. But the code was not equal. Punishments varied by social class. It was not perfect justice. It was something arguably more significant. It was the first time a society wrote its values down and said, here are the rules, and even the king is bound by them. That idea echoes in every legal system on earth today. Hammurabi's empire didn't outlast him by long. Around 1595 BC, the Hittites came. From the mountains of Anatolia, they raided deep into Mesopotamia, sacked Babylon, toppled the dynasty, and then left. No colonization, no occupation. They simply destroyed and withdrew. Into that vacuum came the Kassites. They ruled for over 4 centuries, the longest dynasty in Babylonian history. And yet, they did something unexpected. They didn't replace Babylonian culture, they became it. They adopted the language, worshipped the gods, maintained the administrative systems. This pattern would repeat itself throughout Babylon's history. There was something about this city, its written tradition, its religious prestige, that proved stronger than any army. Babylon was not just a city, it was an idea, and ideas are harder to kill than walls. Eventually the Kassites fell, and Assyria rose. The Assyrians were everything Babylon was not: aggressive, expansionist, ruthless. They built an empire through systematic terror. When the Assyrian king Sennacherib lost patience with Babylonian rebellions in 689 BC, he destroyed the city completely, demolished its temples, diverted water over the ruins. The backlash was immediate. His own sons murdered him. His successor began rebuilding Babylon and publicly apologized to its gods. Babylon had outlasted another conqueror, battered, scarred, but still there. In 626 BC, a Babylonian general named Nabopolassar threw off Assyrian rule and declared Babylon independent once more. He forged an alliance with the Medes, and together they did the unthinkable, attacked Assyria at its heart. In 612 BC, the great Assyrian capital of Nineveh fell. The empire that had terrorized the ancient world for 3 centuries collapsed almost overnight. Babylon was now the most powerful state in the known world. That task of what came next fell to Nabopolassar's son. His name was Nebuchadnezzar II. He reigned for over 40 years and transformed Babylon into something the world had never seen. At its peak, the city covered 10 square kilometers. Its population reached 200,000 people, almost certainly the largest city on earth at the time. At its center ran a great processional avenue lined with walls of glazed brick, depicting lions in blue and gold. It led to the Ishtar Gate, faced entirely in deep blue brick, decorated with dragons and bulls in vivid yellow and white. It wasn't just a gate, it was a declaration. You are entering the greatest city on earth. Nebuchadnezzar also marched on Jerusalem twice. The second time he destroyed it, burned the Temple of Solomon, and deported much of the Jewish population to Babylon. This event, the Babylonian captivity, became one of the defining moments in Jewish history. The answers the exiles developed to survive: portable religion, scripture over sacrifice, community over territory, shaped Judaism, and through it, Christianity and Islam. After Nebuchadnezzar's death, the kingdom unraveled, 4 kings in 7 years. The last Babylonian king alienated the very priests that legitimized his rule. Outside the walls, a new power was watching. In October of 539 BC, the army of Cyrus the Great stood outside the walls of Babylon. No siege followed. The Persians diverted the Euphrates and waded in beneath the walls. But what made the entrance remarkable wasn't the engineering, it was the silence. Babylon opened its gates. No battle, no burning, no massacre. The city that had defied empires for 2,000 years surrendered without a fight, and its people welcomed the change. The priests, the merchants, the ordinary citizens, many saw Cyrus not as a conqueror, but as a liberator. He entered not as a destroyer, but as a restorer. He presented himself as the chosen servant of Marduk. He released political prisoners. He allowed deported peoples, including the Jews, to return home. Babylon remained important under Persian rule. Alexander the Great arrived 2 centuries later, so captivated by the city that he planned to make it his capital. He died there in 323 BC, before that dream was realized. Then, slowly, the city faded. Trade routes moved, The population drifted away, the canals fell into disrepair, the desert reclaimed what the rivers had given. But what survived was harder to destroy than any wall. Babylonian astronomy became the foundation of Greek science. Their mathematics, based on the number 60, is still with us every time we look at a clock. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the world's oldest written story, was buried in the same soil as the city itself and survived. Babylon did not end, it dissolved into everything that came after it. Every empire has believed it would last forever. The Assyrians, the Persians, the Romans, every one of them became a chapter in someone else's history book. But what Babylon left behind was not territory, not a dynasty. It left behind questions. What does a just society look like? Who does the law protect? And who does it fail? What do we owe each other? What happens to a people when they lose everything and have to rebuild from nothing? These are not ancient questions. They are this morning's questions. The mud brick city between two rivers is gone. The great ziggurat is a shapeless mound in the Iraqi desert. The name itself has become a synonym for pride and destruction. But strip away the myth, and you find people. People who looked at a hostile, flood-prone plain and decided to build something permanent. Who looked at chaos and decided to write laws. Who looked at loss and decided to remember. Empires are temporary. Ideas are not. Babylon fell. But you are watching this video because of what it built. And that, perhaps, is the only kind of immortality that has ever really existed.